What the Empire didn't know about the Quiet Line. Commander Vithra had been patrolling the Whisper Rift for 11 years. He knew every dust cloud, every dead satellite, every slow-turning rock in his sector. He knew where the boundary markers were. Big ugly things. Imperial-made gray metal broadcasting a signal on all frequencies that translated to, "Beyond this point, you are not welcome." He knew what was on the other side of them. Humans. 7 cramped star systems worth of humans with their loud politics, their incomprehensible food, and their ships that moved like old men walking uphill. He had inspected a human cargo freighter once years ago. It had taken the thing 4 days to cross the distance between 2 of their own planets. 4 full days. An Imperial courier could do it in 40 minutes. So when his sensor officer said there was something at the boundary, he assumed it was another lost freighter. Humans got lost more often than any species he had ever worked with. It was almost endearing, in the way that a very slow and harmless animal could be endearing. "What class?" he asked, not looking up from his duty report. "Sir," said Dora 6, "I don't have a class for it." He looked up. Dora 6 was a young cath, barely 3 years out of the academy, small and green-scaled and precise. She ran her scans clean and reported straight. No drama, no guessing. So the expression she was wearing now, the particular look of someone watching a number refused to change into a sensible number, made him put down his report and walk to her station. He looked at the scan. He looked at it again. "Run it a second time," he said. She ran it, same result. The object sat at the boundary line, not past it, right at it, as though it had measured the exact point and chosen to stop there. It was cylindrical in rough shape, about the size of a heavy cruiser. The hull material returned no match from any database in the Imperial catalog. The energy output was sitting in the range of a full battle carrier, packed into a hull a quarter of that size. And it had not been there 6 minutes ago. Vithra did the math in his head. He did it twice because the first answer was impossible, and he wanted to give the universe a chance to correct itself. The second answer was the same. Something had crossed 2 astronomical units in under 6 minutes. The image from the sensors pulled up on his screen. Dark hull, almost black, with a texture that the sensors were struggling to describe in any known material category. Running lights along the spine, white and amber, steady, slow blinking. No visible gun ports. No obvious weapon housings. And along the side, in letters large enough to read from 3,000 kilometers out, a line of text in the human alphabet. His translation program rendered it cleanly. UNS Iron Meridian. Below that, smaller, for Earth and her children. He stood still for a moment. "Get me fleet command," he said. "Right now." Admiral Koss received the report at 400, still half asleep, tablet in hand on the edge of her bunk. She read it once, put it down, picked it up again, and read it twice more. She was 42 years into her career in the Imperial fleet. 3 border conflicts, 2 colony suppressions, 1 head-on engagement with a pirate alliance that had been operating in the outer sectors for over a decade. She was not a person who rattled easily. She was rattled. She had her senior staff in the briefing room within the hour. Scan results on the main display. She stood at the front of the room and let them look. Her weapons officer, Hargan of Reeth, big even by Veth standards, with a career's worth of combat scars, spoke first. "Spoofed signal. Someone faking human markings. The power output is real," said Pellan, the science officer. The Dreth was already running secondary analysis on her personal screen, pulling windows open one after another. "A signal can be faked. An energy signature like that cannot. Whatever that ship is running, it is genuinely running it." "Then what are we dealing with?" said Hargan. "I don't know," said Pellan. She said it very flatly, like the words were heavy to hold. "And I don't like saying that." Koss had spent the shuttle ride reviewing the Empire's complete intelligence file on human military development. It was thorough. 30 years of surveillance, inspection, informant networks inside human space, satellite observation of every major human facility. It was about as thorough as a document could be. It said primitive propulsion systems, limited energy weapons, basic kinetic technology, no significant development in the past decade. The file was wrong. Not a little wrong, completely catastrophically wrong. "They've been hiding something," she said, not a question. "For years they've been building something and hiding it. What I need to know is how." No one had an answer yet. "We move in," she said. "Full group, slow approach, shields up, weapons on standby, not active. I don't want to fire the first shot at something I don't understand. Comm line open at all times." She paused and looked around the room. "Any questions?" Hargan looked at the power readings one more time, then at her. "No questions." The 3rd Imperial Battle Group moved in formation. Dreadnought at the center, heavy cruisers on the flanks, frigates spread wide in a screening pattern, 14 ships in total. A force that had made pirate fleets turn and run and made colonial governments recalculate their options. It was objectively the most powerful military presence in this region of space. Koss stood at her forward viewport and watched the asterisk iron meridian through the high-resolution scope. The ship had not moved, had not powered anything visible, had not attempted to scan them as far as their own sensors could tell. It just sat there with its amber running lights blinking slow and steady, like it was breathing. 14 ships coming at it, and it sat there like it had nowhere else to be. She opened the comm channel. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Koss of the Galactic Empire's 3rd Battle Group. You are at the protected boundary established by the Treaty of Kepler. Unauthorized presence in this zone is a violation of Imperial law. Identify yourself and state your purpose immediately. Static, then clean and unhurried. A voice, human, female, young, not a scared young. The kind of young that comes with knowing exactly what you are doing. Admiral Koss, this is Captain Sorental, commanding the UNS Asterisk Iron Meridian Asterisk. We read you clearly. We've been waiting for your call. Koss kept her voice even. You are aware you are at a restricted boundary. At it, said Tal. Not past it. We measured carefully. We wanted you to see us. And we wanted you to come out here, and you have. We'd like to have a conversation. About what? About the arrangement, said Tal. The boundary, the treaty, 40 years of it. We've been thinking. We'd like to discuss a change. Koss thought about the power readings, thought about 6 minutes to cross 2 astronomical units. I think, she said carefully, that a conversation is a good idea. They agreed on a neutral meeting vessel. A small Imperial diplomatic shuttle, open space, no weapon systems aboard. Koss brought Pelen and Hargan. She considered a larger delegation and decided against it. More people meant more visible anxiety. She was an admiral. She was absolutely and professionally not anxious. She was simply being very careful. The humans came across in a small transfer pod. 3 of them, 2 in the dark uniform of the United Nations Space Command. Koss could identify military people by the way they moved through an unfamiliar room, scanning exits, noting positions, and 1 civilian, old man, gray-haired, wearing a plain dark coat with no markings. He walked in and sat down at the table without waiting to be invited, pulled out a small personal device and started reading something on it. He looked comfortable, like this was a meeting he had been to 1,000 times. Dr. Amara Nuasu, he said without looking up. I led the engineering team for the Asterisk Iron Meridian Asterisk, 1,200 people over 14 years. I thought it would make sense to have someone here who can answer technical questions directly, rather than having you guess. 14 years, and the Empire had seen nothing. Koss sat down. You built it. He looked up then. He had the eyes of someone who had spent a lifetime solving problems that hadn't been solved before. A specific kind of focus. Deep and quiet, he smiled. We built it. A lot of brilliant people gave a lot of years to it. I am very proud of all of them. How, said Pelen, not a full question, just the one word. Nuasu nodded, like he had expected exactly that. He talked for nearly an hour. The hull composite was called Adaptive Redistribution Armor. The full technical designation was longer and involved several dead Earth languages and some symbols that didn't translate into Imperial notation. The concept came from studying a fungal growth on one of humanity's outer moons, a biological structure that spread kinetic energy through its cellular network rather than resisting it. An impact at any single point was instantly distributed across the whole organism. No one point ever took enough force to be damaged. A materials scientist on the team, Dr. Wei Chen, had spent 11 years reverse engineering the principle into a manufactured composite. The result was a hull that took the energy of a weapon impact and spread it across its entire surface area, dissipating it before any structural damage could occur. A portion of that dissipated energy was captured and recycled into the drive system. In plain terms, said Nuasu, the harder you hit it, the faster it goes. Pelen had stopped moving. The drive system was what Nuasu called an inertia fold. The mathematics, he said, were still being refined. He would not apologize for that. Some problems took time, but the working principle, by temporarily reclassifying the ship's inertial mass as external to its own reference frame, normal limits on acceleration ceased to apply. A ship that had effectively no inertia could reach speeds that standard propulsion physics said were impossible. That is why it took 6 minutes, said Koss. 6 minutes was us being conservative. Warm smile. We didn't want to scare anyone more than necessary. Koss absorbed this. Pelen had not blinked in some time. The weapons, said Koss. Nuasu's smile didn't change. Not today. We came to talk, Admiral, not to threaten. The weapons are real and we'll discuss them eventually. But today we just wanted to be visible, to show you what we are. Captain Tal leaned forward. She had the same quality of stillness that very good soldiers often had. The kind that meant a lot of decisions had been made and a lot of consequences had been lived through. Admiral, she said, Earth took the boundary in good faith 40 years ago. We held to it. Our people wanted to expand, to move outward. We held them back. We used the time to work." She paused. "We're not here to threaten the Empire. We're not here to fight anyone. We're here because we think the arrangement needs to change, and we think we're now in a position to have that conversation as equals." Equals, one word. It landed differently than Kosv expected. She looked across the table at the old engineer and the young captain and the two quiet soldiers standing at the back of the room. She thought about 14 years of hidden work, 1,200 engineers. A fungal growth on a distant moon turned into armor that converted weapons fire into fuel. She thought about how long she had spent thinking of humans as small. "I need to take this to the Emperor," she said. "We expected that," said Tal. "We'll wait." Kosv walked back to her shuttle alone. She sat in the pilot seat for a while, not flying anywhere, just looking through the forward window at the asterisk iron meridian asterisk. Dark hull, steady lights. Absolutely still. 14 of her ships outside, and it sat there like it had not noticed them. She picked up the comm and called the Emperor's duty office. The attendant answered on the second tone. "I need an emergency audience," said Kosv. "Priority Alpha. Tell the Emperor the human situation requires immediate attention." "The nature of the situation, Admiral." She kept looking at the ship. The amber lights blinked, patient, unhurried. "The nature," she said, "is that we've been wrong about them for a very long time, and we need to decide what to do about it before they decide for us." She cut the channel. Outside, the iron meridian waited, the way something waits when it is not in any hurry, because it knows the result. The Emperor's court was on Vethprime, the capital world, a planet of white towers and deep water oceans and 2,000 years of unbroken imperial rule. Nothing had ever threatened it. Nothing had ever come close to threatening it. The idea of a threat to Vethprime was the kind of thing philosophers discussed as a thought exercise, not something anyone took seriously. Grand Admiral Soren took it seriously now. He sat at the head of the Imperial strategy table, a round table, deliberately round, because the Emperor had once said that in a circle everyone faces inward, and no one can pretend they are not responsible. He read Admiral Kosv's report from beginning to end without speaking. When he finished, he read it again. The 30 other officers and ministers around the table waited. He set the report down. Comments. Everyone started talking at once. Soren let them go for about 30 seconds. Then he held up one hand, and they stopped. 40 years of command rank had given him a specific type of silence that he could project like a physical thing. "One at a time," he said. "Minister Dothrin, you first." Minister Dothrin was the head of Imperial Intelligence. She was a small, older Veth, gray-skinned and precise, with the kind of face that revealed exactly as much as she wanted it to and nothing more. She had been in intelligence for 35 years. She had built the surveillance network that monitored human space. She had written many of the reports that said humanity was no threat. She looked like someone who had just realized she had been wrong about something for a very long time. "The question I keep coming back to," she said, "is asterisk how asterisk. How did they build this ship in 14 years in 7-star systems that we were watching without a single indicator reaching us?" "That is the correct question," said Soren. "The answer I keep arriving at," she said, "is that they knew we were watching, and they built around our surveillance. They used systems we weren't monitoring, materials we weren't flagging, supply chains that looked like civilian trade." "The rare earth purchases," said someone across the table. A younger officer, Fleet Captain Marin, pulling up files on his personal screen. "There were unusual purchases of several low-value materials over the last 12 years. We flagged them as minor anomalies. They weren't connected to anything in the threat models. Low value by asterisk are asterisk standards," said Pellan. She had come with Kos for the debrief, and she had been sitting at the far end of the table looking like someone who had not slept. "The raw materials for adaptive redistribution composites, by themselves, each one is unremarkable. Raw metamaterial precursors, thermal dissipation compounds, structural binding agents, ordinary individually." She paused. "Together, they're the armor of a ship that cannot be damaged by conventional weapons fire." "Silence. Cannot be damaged," repeated Soren. "I'm still running the models," said Pellan. "But based on what Dr. Nuasu described and the secondary properties I observed in the hull scan, I believe that is accurate. Standard plasma weaponry, standard kinetic rounds, standard energy lance systems. All of them would have their impact energy redistributed across the hull and partially recycled into the drive. The ship would not stop. It would not slow. It would asterisk accelerate." More silence. Soren looked at the scan data on the main table display. The iron meridian hung there in 3 dimensions, rotating slowly. Dark hull, amber lights. "How many ships like this do they have?" Everyone looked at Dothrin. Dothrin looked like she was carrying something heavy. "We don't know. Based on what we've reconstructed of the supply chain, the material volumes were consistent with one ship. But the same supply chain deception that hid this ship could have hidden others. We simply do not know. Soren stood up and walked to the viewport. The white spires of Veth Prime stretched below him. The capital, the center of an empire that stretched across 300 star systems, governed 47 species, had stood for 2,000 years. "Get me everything," he said. "Every trade record, every surveillance feed, every informant report, everything we have on humanity going back 50 years. I want it reviewed from scratch with new eyes, looking for what we missed." He turned back to the table. "And I want to talk to this Captain Tal myself." The secure channel was established the following day. Soren had reviewed enough of the new intelligence assessments to know that he was not going to win this by projecting strength. That approach required the other side to be uncertain of your strength relative to theirs. Captain Tal, sitting relaxed in what appeared to be the *Iron Meridian *S command deck, did not look uncertain about anything. "Grand Admiral," she said, "thank you for reaching out directly." "Captain Tal," he said, "I want to understand something before we go further. The Iron Meridian *. Is it one of many, or is it the only one?" She didn't answer immediately, not hesitation, more like she was deciding how much to say and in what order. "It's the first of its class," she said finally. "The first to be commissioned, the first to be deployed, and the others are in various stages of completion." He absorbed this. How many stages? She smiled, a polite smile. Not warm, not cold, professional. "Grand Admiral, we're not here to negotiate from a position of fear. I think we've demonstrated that. The number of ships we have is information we'll share as part of a proper diplomatic process under proper terms, not as a demand or a threat, as part of a real conversation. You understand," he said, "that the Empire does not negotiate from a position of uncertainty." "I understand that that has been the Empire's position," she said. "I'm suggesting it may need to become more flexible." Soren studied her face through the screen. She was young, not green or careless. The kind of young that someone who had grown up knowing they were going to do something like this would be. Prepared, long prepared. "What does Earth want?" he asked directly. "Expansion rights? Freedom of movement through the sectors currently restricted to us. Full diplomatic recognition as a sovereign galactic power, not a protected species. Fair trade access. And a seat at the table when decisions are made that affect our systems." "That is a great deal." "Yes," she agreed. "And we think we've demonstrated that we're in a position to ask for it." Soren ended the call politely, then stood looking at the blank screen for a long time. The intelligence review took 10 days. Dothrin's people worked without sleep, pulling records and cross-referencing, following supply chains backward through third-party traders and shell companies and civilian transport logs. What they found was both impressive and horrifying. In the specific way that something is horrifying when you realize how obvious it should have been. Humanity had been buying raw materials through 17 different intermediary species, routing purchases through established trading networks that the Empire monitored for obvious threats, weapons components, military propulsion parts, known conflict materials. They had been specifically buying things that did not appear on any threat list, things that looked like industrial components. Research equipment, construction materials. The quantities accumulated over 12 years pointed to a manufacturing effort on a scale that required a facility the Empire had not found. Because the facility was not in any of humanity's known 7 systems. It was on a moon in the outer dark, past the mapped boundary, past the Treaty of Kepler line, in a region of space that the Empire's surveys had classified as empty and not worth the fuel to investigate. Humans evidently had a different opinion about what was worth investigating. The moon had no name in any Imperial database. Its human designation, once they dug deep enough into the recovered files, was listed simply as Foundry 1*. "There's a Foundry 2, said one of Dothrin's analysts, face pale, setting a tablet on the minister's desk. Dothrin looked at the file. Yes, I see that." She kept scrolling. "And Foundry 3 and 4 and 5. The analyst swallowed. "We believe Foundry 6 is still under construction." Dothrin brought the full report to Soren that evening. He read it standing up. He sat down halfway through. He finished reading. He put the report on his desk. 6 foundries, he said. "Yes, and each one is producing ships of the Iron Meridian class. Yes, at varying rates, based on the material volumes and construction timelines we've reconstructed." She paused. She was very controlled. Dothrin, 35 years of intelligence work had made her controlled. She was being careful with these words. "We estimate that the UNC currently has between 11 and 19 vessels in operational or near-operational condition, in addition to the Iron Meridian *. Soren sat quietly for a moment. "We need to know if they have weapons on those ships," he said. "Agreed, I've been developing an approach. We could." The alert came through before she could finish. The Iron Meridian had moved. Not far, not past the boundary. It had simply repositioned itself, rotated 40 degrees, moved approximately 800 kilometers, ending up at a slightly different point along the boundary line. The movement itself was not alarming. What was alarming was that none of the 17 sensor platforms the Empire had positioned to watch it had detected the movement until after it was done. Not during, after. It had moved 800 kilometers, and the sensors had missed it entirely. Soren's tactical command team was going through the playback on a loop when he arrived on the bridge. They had run it 6 times. The result was the same every time. 1 frame, ship at position A. Next frame, 0.3 seconds later, ship at position B. No transition, no recorded motion, just somewhere else. "Is the recording corrupted?" he asked. "We checked all 17 feeds," said the tactical officer. "Independently captured, all show the same gap. The ship moved faster than our sensor refresh rate. Our sensor refresh rate is 0.3 seconds, said Soren. "Yes, sir." Soren looked at the display. The Iron Meridian was sitting at its new position, amber lights blinking, utterly still. "It moved 800 kilometers in less than 0.3 seconds, he said. "Yes, sir." He thought about Admiral Kossov's report. 6 minutes was us being conservative. We didn't want to scare anyone more than necessary. The comm lit up. Tal's channel, he answered it. "Grand Admiral," she said. She sounded the same as always, calm, professional. "We noticed your sensor platforms tracking us. We thought a small demonstration of the repositioning capability might save time. You would have asked eventually." He looked at her through the screen. "You could have gone anywhere just then." "Yes," she said simply. "You could have crossed the boundary. You could have come to Veth Prime." "We could have," she agreed. "We didn't because we're not here to invade. We're here to talk. But I think it's helpful for everyone to understand what *talking means in this context." He held her gaze. She held his without effort. "I'll have a formal diplomatic proposal drawn up," he said. "Terms for discussion." "We'll be ready," she said. He cut the channel, looked at his tactical team, looked at the display. The Iron Meridian *, dark, still, patient. "Someone get me Minister Dothrin," he said. "And get me something for a headache." The room was very quiet. Outside, past the boundary, the ship waited. It was very good at waiting. There was a faction in the Emperor's court that believed the answer was simple. Send more ships. The logic was straightforward, at least from the outside. The Iron Meridian was one vessel. Regardless of what it could do, the Empire had thousands of ships spread across 300 star systems. Numbers, they argued, were the ultimate equalizer. Soren listened to this argument for 3 days. He listened to it from fleet admirals and strategy ministers, and 2 members of the Emperor's personal council. He listened to it in meetings and side conversations, and once in a hallway outside the main briefing chamber from a junior official who had apparently decided the Grand Admiral was approachable. He had a lot of patience, Soren. It was one of the reasons he had survived long enough to reach his rank. On the 4th day, he told them his answer. "We are not doing that. Grand Admiral, I have read the intelligence assessment. I have reviewed the sensor data from the repositioning event. I have had 3 conversations with Captain Tal." He looked at the assembled faces around the table. "I want to ask everyone here a question. If you send 1,000 ships to that boundary and the Iron Meridian * is still sitting there when they arrive, what do you do next?" Nobody answered. "Because shooting is the next step," he said. "And we do not yet know what happens when you shoot at it. We have a theoretical description from an engineer who was being deliberately incomplete, and we have sensor readings that suggest it converts weapons impact into drive power. If that description is accurate, then firing on it accelerates *it, and if it accelerates toward us at the speeds we have observed it capable of reaching." He let them do the math themselves. The room was quiet. "We send a fleet," he said, "but not to threaten. We send it to negotiate, and we send someone who * can negotiate. Not someone who will wave ships around and expect that to be enough." He looked at Fleet Admiral Kiros 10, the most experienced diplomat in the Imperial military. "Kiros 10, this one is yours." Fleet Admiral Kiros 10 was 70 years old and had negotiated 17 major treaties in his career. He was known for 2 things: an ability to find the position that allowed 2 parties to stop pointing weapons at each other and call it a mutual decision, and an absolute refusal to be rattled by anything, ever. The second quality was tested almost immediately. He arrived at the Whisper Rift with 50 ships, not the full Imperial fleet. Soren had been clear about that. 50 heavy-class vessels, enough to represent seriousness without appearing to be a war fleet. They came in standard escort formation, Kiro's 10 flagship at the center, and they positioned themselves across the boundary line at a respectful distance from the Iron Meridian *. The Iron Meridian had not moved. It had also, Kiro's 10 noticed as his sensor team ran their first sweep, been joined. "How many?" he said quietly to his sensor officer. "We're still counting." said the officer, who sounded like she was trying not to sound disturbed and was not entirely succeeding. They're harder to track than they should be. The whole material scatters our active scan. She got a number eventually. 9. 9 vessels of the Asterisk Iron Meridian Asterisk class arranged in a loose formation behind the first ship, sitting on the human side of the boundary. Dark hulls, amber lights, all of them still. It looked like a gathering of very large and very patient shadows. Kiros 10 looked at the formation for a while. He thought about the intelligence estimate, between 11 and 19 operational vessels. The number 9 was consistent with that range. It meant somewhere between 2 and 10 more were elsewhere. Elsewhere being a word that covered a great deal of space and very little certainty. He opened the comm. Captain Tal, this is Fleet Admiral Kiros 10. I've been sent to formalize the diplomatic process your side requested. I appreciate the welcome. Fleet Admiral, thank you for coming personally. We brought a few colleagues, as you can see. I do see. I appreciate the transparency. We thought it would save time. She said it like the repositioning. He almost smiled. She was good. He had negotiated with species who had been spacefaring for 1,000 years. He had rarely encountered someone this good at saying exactly as much as they wanted to say and making it feel like generosity. I think, he said, we should meet properly. My ship is comfortable. I'd like to invite you and your people aboard. A pause. We'll come to you. But I'd like to bring Dr. Nuasu and 2 others. Of course. They came in the same small transfer pod. 4 of them this time. Tal, Nuasu, Commander Yuki Adami, the Iron Meridian Asterisk S Tactical Officer, and a civilian named Dr. Priya Sharma, identified as the lead theoretical physicist on the Inertia Fold project. Dr. Sharma was young, very young, by the standards of someone who had apparently spent the last decade reclassifying what propulsion physics was allowed to do. She looked around Kiros 10 flagship with the unguarded interest of someone who found new ships genuinely exciting rather than intimidating. He found himself liking her immediately. It was a diplomatic hazard he was used to. They sat around a proper conference table. Food was provided. He had been briefed that humans ate a wide variety of things without particular issue, which made catering straightforward. Kiros 10 opened with the formal position. The Empire recognizes that this conversation is necessary. We are prepared to discuss the terms under which the Treaty of Kepler might be revised. We are willing to consider expanded movement rights for human vessels in certain specified corridors, and to open formal diplomatic channels commensurate with your status as a sovereign people. Tal listened with her hands folded on the table. When he finished, she said, "That's a starting position." "It is. We'd like to discuss the end position, specifically, full movement rights throughout unrestricted imperial space, the same rights enjoyed by any of the 47 member species, full diplomatic standing, trade access, and a seat on the Galactic Council." Kiros 10 kept his expression neutral. The Galactic Council had 47 seats, 1 per member species. A seat required a species to have been a recognized galactic partner for a minimum of 100 years and to have demonstrated peaceful integration into the imperial community. Humanity had been a known species for 30 years. That, he said, is a significant request. Yes, we know. We also know that the traditional path to that seat takes 100 years and a history of gradual integration. We're suggesting there may be an alternative path, given the circumstances. The alternative path being that we've already demonstrated we're capable of participating as full partners, said Nuasu gently. He had been quiet until now, working on something on his personal device. He set it down and looked up. The traditional criteria for council membership are roughly technological capability, stable governance, peaceful intent, and the ability to contribute meaningfully to collective galactic problems. We believe we meet all 4. The Empire has its own assessment process for those criteria, said Kiros 10. Of course, but I'd suggest that the assessment process was designed around a set of assumptions that may need updating. He smiled, the same warm smile from Kosp's report. We spent 14 years building quietly in deep space because we were working within a set of rules that were imposed on us. We'd like to work within a set of rules we helped write. Kiros 10 looked at him for a long moment. I'll need to bring your proposal back to the Grand Admiral. We expected that. The second part of the meeting was less formal. Food had been eaten, tea distributed. Humans drank an astonishing variety of hot beverages and seemed to find all of them soothing. The atmosphere had settled into something closer to careful professional respect than initial standoff. Dr. Sharma had been quiet through most of the formal portion. Now she leaned forward slightly. "I have a question," she said in the direct way of someone who spent most of her time thinking about physics and had not entirely mastered the pacing of diplomatic conversation. "Your largest vessels, your dreadnoughts, what's the maximum safe acceleration you run them at?" Kiros 10 owned science officer, who had been sitting in on the meeting as a technical observer, blinked. That's proprietary information. Right, sorry. Sharma didn't sound especially sorry. I was curious because the inertia fold doesn't have a meaningful upper limit the way a standard drive does. We've been testing in the outer systems, and we haven't found a point where it stops working. Theoretically, she glanced at Nuasu, who made a small hand gesture that appeared to mean you can continue asterisk. Theoretically, it scales. You put more power in, you go faster. There's no acceleration wall. The Imperial Science Officer looked at her, then at Kiros 10, then back at her. No acceleration wall. Not that we've found, though we're still exploring the upper range. What is the upper range? Said Kiros 10. Nuasu smiled pleasantly. That is also information we'll share as part of a formal process. Kiros 10 made a note. He had a lot of notes by the end of the day. The formal report back to Soren took place over a secure channel that evening. Kiros 10 relayed the conversation in full. The requests, the tone, the 9 ships visible on the human side of the boundary, the one thing Dr. Sharma had said about the acceleration wall. Soren listened without interrupting. When Kiros 10 was done, there was a pause. No acceleration wall, said Soren. That is what she said. She seemed almost casual about it. Another pause. Kiros 10. In your professional assessment in 40 years of diplomacy, is she bluffing? Kiros 10 thought about this seriously. He thought about the 9 ships on the sensor display. He thought about the repositioning event. He thought about Dr. Sharma's expression when she talked about the drive system, not the careful, measured expression of someone delivering a threat, but the genuine, slightly unfocused expression of someone who loved the thing they were talking about and forgot briefly that it was supposed to be strategic. No, he said, I don't think she's bluffing about anything. Silence from Soren's end. Then we need to make a decision, said the Grand Admiral. A real one, not a temporary stall, not a show of force. A real decision about what this empire does next. He paused, and I need to talk to the Emperor. Admiral Varric Thrain had been commanding the Imperial Ninth Strike Fleet for 12 years. He was a warrior, not a diplomat. He had said as much publicly many times. He believed the diplomatic approach to the human problem was a mistake. He believed that one ship, regardless of what it could do, was one ship, and that the answer to one ship was always, inevitably, enough ships. He had 40 ships. He was also operating outside his orders. He had convinced himself that this was acceptable, that the situation demanded initiative, that by the time Soren and Kiros 10 finished talking to the humans, the Empire would have already surrendered its position from a place of strength, and then no amount of ships would matter because the precedent would have been set. You talked to them, you treated them like equals, and once you did that, everyone else in the galaxy who was waiting in their own corner, every species that had ever quietly resented the treaty boundaries, every government that had signed agreements it didn't like, all of them would understand that talking worked, that the Empire could be moved. He convinced himself he was protecting the Empire. He brought 40 ships to the Whisper Rift, coming in from the outer approach outside the established patrol corridor. He came very fast, and he did not announce himself. Captain Soren Tal was in the middle of a meal when the alert hit. She was eating with 3 of her senior officers in the Iron Meridian S small wardroom, a room that existed largely because Dr. Nuasu had insisted during design that people needed a place to eat that was not a desk. They had been talking about nothing in particular, the way people do when they are in the middle of something significant and need an hour away from it. The alert was clean and direct, the way all alerts on the Iron Meridian were designed to be. No alarms, no flashing lights, a tone, and then a voice. Captain Unidentified Fleet inbound from bearing 270. Outer approach, 40 vessels. No IFF signal, no hail, speed and trajectory suggest intercept course. She put down her food. Time to intercept, 8 minutes at current speed. Battle stations. She was in the command center in 90 seconds. The display had the incoming formation mapped. 40 Imperial vessels. Attack spread. Weapons hot. The sensor readings were very clear about the weapons hot part. No ambiguity. Kiros 10 came on the channel. She had never seen a diplomat look the way he looked now. He looked like a man watching a fire he had.